who is the professor here at Sasin. Second panelist is Kun Siri Kanya Tansakun, who is the research manager at Thailand Future Foundation. And our third panelist is Chris Ostrike, who is the founder of the Wicked Problem Cooperative. And our moderator is Kun Wasu Sivipa, our research associate at SESM.
Good evening. I think it was clear since the reception of the movie Inequality for All that the kids hit the core. Inequality is everywhere. It is not just in the United States, but it's all around the world as well. There's a mounting concerns about the increase in inequality and the lack of opportunity. And we see that these twin trends are moving and it change our economy, our democratic politics, and our societies. And today we're going to discuss about it together. First, let me start with a question from the movie. Can you please describe the moment from the films that is really sticking to you? Perhaps it's like you find it particularly inspiring or you find it particularly troubling? Can you please start?
Sure. So, a couple of things that I found really interesting in the movie. You've got the plant worker who's pro-union, but he doesn't see a problem with cutting wages, cutting jobs, cutting benefits. So it's like he's able to hold two completely opposed ideas in his head and doesn't see any problem with that, which is interesting for me. The comment that Robert Rice made, big companies are not designed to create good jobs, but rather to create profits. People want to go work with these big companies because for a really long time in the U.S., they did create good jobs. People had really good lives from them. But over the last 30 years, there's been a big shift. And those companies have done everything they possibly could, at least most of them have, to cut costs. And now, they're no longer with great jobs they used to be. And he talked about, Robert Rice talked about the coping mechanisms that the U.S. has gone through. Women going into the workforce, people working more hours, and then taking on debt. Well, there are only so many women that can go into the workforce. People can only take on so many extra hours, as you said, and the companies don't pay for those extra hours nearly as well as they used to. And you can only take on so much debt. We had our last big economic downturn in 07, 08. It's been about 8 years. That's kind of been the cycle in recent years. So I'm wondering, when's the next one coming, and what's it going to be like? Because we don't have coping mechanisms to go to. And two last things real quick. There's a comment from the movie. They said, no one wants to pay taxes. I do. I want good roads. I want public transportation. I want clean air. I want clean water. I want someone to clean up the clogs. I want to have a beautiful Bangkok. So I want to pay taxes, and I think everyone should want to. But I want everyone to make enough money so that they can pay taxes and live a decent life. And then just one final comment on what was in the movie. Did anyone recognize the voice? There was someone talking about the opportunity to make a huge deal on real estate. Donald Trump taking people for a ride back in the 1990s, so he's still at it. So anyways, I'll stop there.
Well, as I'm a Thai, I couldn't help myself but asking myself what situation in Thailand is, right, after watching the movie. Because at first, Raj has raised 3 questions about like what's happening in terms of distribution. So I can't help looking at the, this income distribution in Thailand. So could you please show the presentation? So I think, some of you might not be familiar with backgrounds of income inequality in Thailand. So I will take this chance. ขอสไลด์ได้ไหมคะ So he asked like, what's happening in terms of income distribution, and then why? And the last question is that, when does it become a problem, right? It's a problem because, you know, in one of the economic and social development plan, it says, like this: even though the Thai economy has established an impressive record of economic growth, income distribution is quite uneven and geographic imbalance still exists. The incomes of the urban areas are generally about twice higher than those in rural communities. But the average income in the metropolitan area of Bangkok is more than triple those in villages in the northeast. This disparity raises potential danger not only of an economic nature but of political subversions as well. And they're concerned about this since 1960s, since the first plan. And then how do we fare so far? I looked back 3 decades ago, around 1986, and we found that our inequality in terms of the gap between the richest 10% and the bottom 10% is even wider. So it's not that far, like far back, like in the movie. He talked about like in 1920s or something like that. But the data in Thailand is not that complete. So, and if you look at you know, the poorest 10 and the richest 10, it comes that the poorest are not. You know, some people might think that farmers are the poorest, but now not anymore. It's the elderly that is the poorest. And they live on remittance from their families. And the richest 10% are the usual suspects, the professionals or business owners. And the income of the poorest 10% is just like 4,000 baht per month. That's for the whole household, not one earner. And the richest 10% is the average income is 90,000 baht per month. We talk about the income. This is how the income distribution in Thailand look like. It's not like normal distribution, you know, very well-shaped bell curve. No, it's like this. And the median household income is just 60,000 baht, and while the average household income is 24,000 baht per month. So you can't really, tell by the average, right? You must look at the median or the mode, which is just 8,000 to 9,000 baht. And that's the income. Let's take a look at the wealth. We are like in the bottom 10, top 10, I mean, in terms of wealth inequality, in the world. If we have a look, in terms of income, if we have like 100 baht, like total income in this country is 100 baht, 2 baht goes to the poorest 10, and almost 40 baht go to the top 10%. But it's even worse in terms of land concentration or deposit. So, yeah. And I can't help thinking about what he's talking about, climbing the ladder, to mobilize their economic mobility, but you couldn't get to that if you cannot have like equal opportunity to get access to quality public services like public education or healthcare, skill development, those kind of things.
My turn. Good evening. The first thing I want to say is, very, very, I think, informative presentation. So we also see the information from Thailand as well. For me, since you asked me what I impressed the most for the movie, let me first say this. This is the first time that I watched this movie, so feeling for me would be fresh. I think it's a really great movie because, it's a movie that, it covered a lot of, maybe some technical stuff. It's like economics, story about that. But it really motivates people. And I think what I like the most, or maybe what I want to emphasize at the moment, is maybe around the end of the movies. I think that this movie shows that, well, clearly inequality is a problem. But it's a very difficult problem. It's a very difficult problem to change because, once the rich people can intervene in the politics, it's not just in the US, it's everywhere. I think it's everywhere. In Thailand, in many developing countries. So it's very difficult questions. And I think, the bottom line of what he's trying to say is, he went back to teach. And I think what he's trying to do is, to try to motivate people, right? You cannot just ask, the politicians or, the top 1% of people in the country to change. They don't have the will to change. And I think that's what he's trying to do. He go back to teach in order to make sure that, maybe some of the people, maybe it could be some of the people in this room as well, that, will do things that will change, will take some action. So I think that's, for me, that's what would be, like the most inspiring thing about the movie. Okay?
Thank you. Robert Raj has said in the movie that he says the question is not inequality per se. The question is, when does inequality become a problem? Do you agree or disagree with this?
So is it that there's inequality at all, or is it that it reaches some point where it's a problem? I think you're never going to have perfect equality in any economy. You're not going to have something where everyone has equal assets and equal income and spends an equal amount. I mean, that's just crazy to think that. But I think there needs to be some kind of boundaries that keep people within a certain distance of each other, or else eventually you have problems. Philosopher John Rawls had an idea of a chain where everyone's income was somewhere on this chain, and in good times the chain would go up, and in bad times the chain would go down. Maybe the chain would shorten a little sometimes, but it would never stretch beyond a certain point to where the people at the top would suddenly be making 10, 100, 1,000 times as much as the people at the bottom. And where do you draw those lines? I don't know. But I think philosophically the idea is pretty sound that there need to be some kind of boundaries, or else eventually things will get out of control.
For me, it's like, I think it's, some sort of inequality is acceptable. Like income inequality, like you said, you couldn't, equalize everyone's income, right? But it's like, but there's some kind of inequality that is not acceptable. For example, like opportunity. Everyone should have like equal opportunity. I can, make a metaphor, like you're running in a race, and you know that the best will win, the fastest will win. But, but if you know that the starting point is not the same. For example, of course, if you're born in a rich family, you have like better, closer to the goal, starting points. But unequal opportunity could mean like you keep them off the race. You couldn't join the race at all. That's the unequal opportunity that is not acceptable.
I think I already said that, I think definitely inequality is a problem, is an issue. Maybe I might want to point out what we discussed in another dimension. What we have seen is just one dimension of inequality. There actually are so many other dimensions, right? We have seen inequalities in the dimension of within countries. There are inequalities, across countries. Actually, richer countries become richer and poorer countries become poorer, right? And and if you search, YouTube or you Google it, you will find a lot of information that I think I agree with you that for some countries and some people in poor countries, there's not even opportunities. There's not even opportunity to be alive. Some of them, they have children born, and many of their children die very, very young. That's very sad. So, clearly, in America, yes, it's an issue, right? Other countries around the world, it might be even bigger issues, right? In developing countries, in Thailand, in Southeast Asia. So, so this is we are seeing one dimension, right, of inequality, and across country inequality is also big issues, and not only that, this movie, when Robert Reich measuring inequality, he talked about income and wealth. Of course, these are the two commonly used measures, but actually there are many other ways you can talk about. Opportunity for education, freedom, or when people when people want to capture another end, of distribution, when people talk about poverty, right? You can find good statistic that for some people in the country, they don't even have good access to clean water. They don't have even access to electricity at all. They don't have access to just okay hospital, right? So when we look into this facts, look into this dimension, I think it's sad that there are so many people in the world who are living in these conditions, right? The majority of the people in the world right now, it's not in developed countries, it's in developing countries, and these are poor countries, and a lot of people in these poor countries are living in a very, very poor conditions, right? So definitely I think it's a problem. It's a problem for within countries. It's a problem for the world, and I think for me, I'm also doing research about poverty, right? I think whatever we can do to find a way to make it a better world, I think that's important.
One more point to point out. Income and wealth is one thing, opportunity is the second thing, and the third one is like the sense of unfairness of people, right? I think there are some studies that say that the political unrest or social conflict has been caused, and in Thailand since 2011, it's caused by sense of unfairness, of inequality, and also it's injustice that made people go out on the street a few years ago. It's the sense of injustice. Not everyone is equal in front of the law, right? Before the law. So I think that's a display of the problem of inequality in some sense.
We have one more comment real quick. A recent study found that 85% of U.S. adults suffer from financial anxiety. 85% of the adults in the richest country of the world suffer from financial anxiety. The entire developing world has been trying for years and years and years to emulate the U.S. And there's been kind of this, perception of just waiting your turn. Each developing nation would move up the ranks into this sort of middle class sort of society. But it seems like a lot of that is stalled out. I attended a discussion recently at the UN offices here, and someone who was near the end of his time working with the UN, he's at retirement age, said, look, this time where money was transferred from wealthy nations to developing nations is coming to an end. Those taps are being cut off, and these developing nations are going to have to stand up on their own. And we're still trying to move towards the model where 85% of the people are suffering this anxiety. It doesn't work, and we need to start looking at different ways to form our economies and to in our societies so that we take care of ourselves better.
Thank you. When we talk to people on the street, some people will say inequality is inevitable. It's something we have to deal with it every day. But capitalist systems incentivize people by using capital and use the financial reward as an incentive to make people working harder and be more creative, be more inventive. But so should we actually worry about inequality? It's like if we don't have inequality, why people would work harder? Why would I need to be more inventive?
I would ask most people, are they benefiting from the current circumstances of working harder so we have this bigger pie? It's not being divided up in a way that's fair. And I think, yeah, if you take away all of the incentives, some people will be motivated out of, they're going to go and do work that they enjoy or whatever, but the economic pie may shrink. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. We're already using 1.5 times the resources that the Earth produces in a year. And if everyone lived a US-type lifestyle, it would be more like 4 to 5 times the resources that the Earth produces. So, I mean, how fast do we want to burn up the apple?
Do you think this capitalism is a good system to drive the economy?
Let me comment on another thing first. You mentioned that should we worry about inequality and if we worry about inequality, why don't we try to have like perfect equality? Well, I don't think we're not talking about that because perfect inequality is impossible, right? Of course, inequality create incentives, right? People who work hard, they benefit from that. People who are more productive benefit from that. So, that is one of the key mechanisms of the market economy, right? That is a good side of the market economy. I'm perfectly happy with that. But, there's also another side of the story, right? Which is, when the market, when some people will actually benefit from, this rule of the game, try and change the game, and also, end up actually affecting a lot of other people. When we actually saw, in a movie, right? The movie showed the life of the middle class. And I think that's clearly say why it's a problem, right? One of the ladies and one of the guy, they say this in their saving account, checking account. It's just, I don't remember the number, like $20 or $30, and then somebody asks, "Do you have any saving?" The answer is no. They don't even have saving. That's definitely unacceptable. How can they? How can they? It's like you just living day by day, and then once you reach retirement, how are you gonna live, right? Definitely, in the future, there's going to be population aging. There's going to be a lot of people retirement. Everyone cannot depend on the government. The government wouldn't have enough money to support everyone. So if they don't have enough saving, what about that future, right? So and this is just an example for the United States. People say that United States is the greatest countries in the world. What about other countries in the world? There are other countries in the world with lower income, more poverty, more poor people. They are developing countries. In the future, the world population will reach 11 billion. And 10 billion will be into their developing countries. So how will they live? So to me, I think it's not only just a feeling of unfairness. Of course, feeling of unfairness is a problem. People will feel that when it's it's unfair, enough is enough. Of course, social unrest. People found that inequality linked with country instabilities and things like that. Of course, right? But at the same time, I think it's also it's about when it comes to that point, the world is not worth the living. There'll be a lot of people who think that the world is not worth the living. And again, come back to I think my first impressions is whatever we can do to change this. I think that's going to be very important.
Any comments?
Yes, just a small one about the middle class, because if you let the incentive go on, and the rich get richer and poor get poorer, and middle class disappears. And what are the costs for the economy? the middle class are those who will spend, will consume, and will, creating the demand. I'm speaking of as trained economist, and also they also play the social role as because they are those who depend on the public services. They will use public healthcare, they will use public education, transportation, and their expectations needs to be met by the government, right? Because the rich would go to the public hospital, and they can avoid all sort of low quality public services. But for the middle class, if they demand more of the quality of public services, the government must listen to them, and they will improve the public services that will benefit the poor also. So that's you couldn't let the incentive system goes on.
Okay, now let me take a question from the audience.
I would like to ask the panel's speakers, do you have any solutions for Thailand as we are going to the aging society as a proportion of the population increasing, the aging people and reduce the children, as we have the self-sufficiency, like sufficiency economy theory that's help we recover from many crises, as well as others countries as in United States, they just recover from hamburger crisis. For Thailand, do you have any opinion for the future action?
Do you have any solutions?
Well, that's a very good and also very tough questions, right? Let me explain why these are tough questions. I think you have seen from the movie that eventually, Robert Wright eventually has positions in the government, right? He's a Ministry of Labor, but then he also mentioned that he failed. I mean, given that all of his motivation, his research, his enthusiasm, but in the end he said that he didn't do enough, which means that even though he's really trying, but it can improve somewhat, but not enough. So that's, to me, answer to your question. This is a really tough questions, right? So I definitely do not know the answer, but I will try to find the answer. Now, you also raised, I think, a very important point. It's also a point that maybe I want to share a few things with you. At Sasin, we have a research project. We get a fund from the TRF. It's called Thailand Research Foundation, and the theme of the project is about the impact of the aging population, right? Well, aging population is not new. Actually, look back into the historical data. Population projection is very precise. So actually, even in Thailand, we know about this for long. But for Thailand, I think only in the last few years, people and government just start talking or put more attention to this. And to me, I think these are very important questions and also important issues. Right now, we have about 10% of senior people, so people above 60 to 65. In Thailand, in the next 25 years, that's going to be about nearly 30%. Thailand is one of the countries which will have very fast increase in the share of aging people, right? In developed countries, in in Europe, in even United States, this is not new. But for them, these transitions take a long time, and for them, it's also a struggle, right? In Europe, this leads to be a big problem. In Japan, population aging also leads to big problems, and I think for Thailand as well, this is going to be one important critical issue, right? I remember one of the slides that you show. You show that, you know, and I think, yeah, exact. And I think that's set it up. The poorest are the elderly. I think that's a very important message, right? So that's another dimension. And again, you know, think, you know, not only that, you know, they're likely to be poor. They're likely to live in the bad conditions. But for me, think another way. They have worked for in the past 30 or 35 years. They actually become, you know, they're father or mothers of people. They actually build our nations. But once it's come for the time of their retirement, you know, they not have the good rest. They're actually going to have the bad rest, right? So that's a very important issue. So to answer the questions, I don't know the solutions, but we in our team are trying our best to find whatever we can. You know, definitely they're going to be impact on society. They're going to be impact on organizations, impact on government. You know, issue that we need to talk about government policies. So you know, so that's what I think.
Okay, what my research told me, there are 3 factors that causes inequality or income disparity. First is like which level of education did you attain, where you live, and what your mother's education is. So there's only 2 things that you can change, right? You cannot change your mother's education. So the first thing is that it must be an improvement of public education, the quality of public education, because the access has been, you know, improved a lot. The enrollment rate to high school has been doubled over 20 years. The tutoring also improved. Like a lot of people go to colleges, but the quality is pretty much poor. So it's like you have to borrow to go to college because, you know, 2/3 of Thai households couldn't afford their children to go to university. So you have to borrow in some way. But then once your kids graduate, they become like clerk or service workers. Like 40% of college graduates become clerks or service workers who got like paid like, you know, less than 30%. Only 70% of those who go professionals. So improve the public education. Second, urbanization has been stalled in Thailand for a very, very long time. You know, everything is very concentrated in Bangkok, not everywhere else. So we need to improve the urbanization. And the third one is that you need a systematic social protection. You know, not just like, you know, the rice price goes down and you go out on the street and you get what you want, but you need something more systematic, like, you know, to mitigate your risk, to avoid it, to go back, fall into poverty again once something, you know, unfortunate events happen.
I won't speak along the lines of Thailand. I think that'd be pretty presumptuous of me. But I just want to make a quick comment about something I saw this summer. I went home to the U.S. I hadn't been to my hometown in 4 years. And I saw something that was really disturbing to me. You go into a Walmart or McDonald's or, you know, any other fast food or 7-Eleven. And in the past, there were a lot of young people, some adults, people my age, a little older, working in these places. But there were never elderly people working in these places, and now they were everywhere. So you'd see 75-year-old men who were obviously miserable and exhausted, working these menial jobs. They probably had a good office job their entire career or whatever, and now they couldn't afford, obviously, they couldn't afford to live a comfortable life without having to take on a job like that. And I mean, it was really, really depressing for me. So again, you know, if that's what's happening in the richest country in the world, something is wrong. We really need to change the way we look at things and find a better way to do things.
Next questions? Please.
Yes, I have a question regarding what you said earlier that one of the what affected on how your life would be, and the third point I think I capture is on the mother's education. And for me, it's quite interesting to say that you are very specific on the mother side. So I'd like to hear from the panel as well, like how the gender play roles in these inequalities.
I don't know, the data told me. I mean, because, you always heard about the single mom. And it happens like 14% of children in Thailand live with their mom only, right? But in some 20% live with their relatives, which are their grandpa or grandma. It's like, so, but for me, it shouldn't. It shouldn't depend on what the level of your mother's education, right? It should be. It's not like a lottery of birth. It should be, it should be given equal opportunity, no matter your mother, who's your mother, right? So I think it must be something that should be provided as basic services from the government. It's just that we need. not so fancy, high-speed rail or something like that, but quality public education.
Maybe I can comment a little bit. I think you said it right. The data tell you. But let me give a guess. Maybe it might explain why. I think typically in many countries, including Thailand, when you think about family that tend to be poor, you think about like a single-headed family, right? And usually when you think of a single-headed family, it's a single-headed female family. So the children will tend to live with the mother, right? And I think that is why the majority of when you try to capture people who are in poverty or having inequality, you're likely to capture people who are with low education mother, right? So maybe that might explain a little bit about why is the female educations that play a role. I don't know. That is a guess. I don't know. But then again, having said that, this is also another issue of inequalities, right? There's gender inequalities. There's age discriminations. So I think, like I've said, that this is just one dimension of inequality that we saw, income and wealth, right? And there are many other inequalities in which again, we need to do something about it. And you mentioned one thing that I want to make a comment, right? You mentioned about sufficiency economy, right? Now, sufficiency economy, I believe most of you know it very well. If you don't, I'll just explain it a little bit for you. Sufficiency economy has 3 pillars and 2 conditions, right? And these 3 pillars are, the first one, moderation. The second one is reasonableness. The third one is self-immunity, right? Now, the one that I might want to highlight, and I want to link that to inequality, is the part that we talk about moderation, right? I think, inequality is a problem when it's not moderate. Well, if you don't have inequality at all, that's strange, right? It's only a thing in socialist economy or which not likely to work well, right? You need some incentive for some people to work hard, to create new ideas, to be entrepreneur. We need that. But at the same time, if it's too much, if inequality is too much, it's not moderate, that's when it leads to problems. That's when we're going to have a lot of people living in poor conditions and only a few, people living in very, very good conditions. That's inequality. That's unequal. So that's the 3 pillars, and the 2 conditions of the sufficiency economy is, you need knowledge and you need morality. So you need to know what you're doing, and you need good people to do it. That's my thought.
Next question, please.
So looking at the film, we see how drastic it is for like income inequality gap, 1% and 99%. Is there, in your opinion, the right amount of inequality? Is there like an optimal level in your opinion, Alice?
Chris?
I think if you looked at the chart that Robert Rice shared, he basically showed the bridge. And basically anywhere in the middle of that, times were pretty good for most Americans. So I would say somewhere in there where CEOs were maybe making 10 times their employees, maybe it was 100 times in some cases, but for the most part it wasn't this egregious 1,000 times as much as the lowest paid employee. So I think there's some good historical precedent that you can look at for some kind of boundaries that are reasonable.
That you will get to that level anytime in the future, or is it just going to keep rising?
I think we'll get there, but I don't think it'll be. I think it'll be a bumpy road.
All right. I think it's pretty much in relative terms. I will give you an example. If the economy is good, it means the pie is bigger. If you get your portion a little bit smaller than the others, but it's bigger anyway, right? But it's smaller when you compare to the others. But if the economy is, slow downs like these times, and your share, your portion is getting smaller, but it's even smaller than your peers, you're gonna get frustrated. So I think it's pretty much really relative. It's nothing like absolute terms that when Gini coefficient 40 is going to be, no, it's not like that.
Let me add it this way. I never have heard or have seen anyone talking about, we have too much equality, right? So we don't talk about on that end, right? I never heard anyone talking, we have too much equality. I never heard that. So we don't talk about that end. But for the other end, I think we also have some consensus that there are countries and there are periods where there's too much inequalities, right? So I think at that time I would define where's a right level of of inequality, right? Of course, we don't have like a target like Gini coefficient at this point, at that point, but for we know for some countries in the world that in terms of their income inequality, in terms of their distributions, like for example Japan, not a lot of people concerned so much about Japan in terms of inequality, but people talking about the U.S., people talking about Thailand, people talking about Mexico, So for these countries, I think it's quite clear that their inequalities is too high, right? And whatever we can do to lower that, I think it will move the countries into a better direction. That's what my thought. Anything else?
Do you have any questions?
According to the movies, there are no the equations or the real factors to show for the audience. They just said that by the healthcare cost, the education cost, the tax percentage, the gap between the salary. I would like to add the panel discussion. I would like to add the speaker that any models that is suitable for the person to understand and to help them to realize, to help them to move up, like the model, as the movies just say the factors, the problems, but I think for the audience, what would be the benefit for them if they know?
Okay. Yeah, I'll try. Okay. Let me put it this way. Actually, I think what the movies are trying to show is trying to show the connections, right? To connect the dots from a lot of things, right? And to to inequalities. So essentially, it's mean that all of these dots are connected. The union, the globalizations, automations, the rise of the pay of CEO, the political influences. Definitely all of these things are, I think, connected. So I think it's not just a single equation. It's actually connections of things, connections of, well, you might even call it, a very systematic procedure, right? Which is also lead to, I think, another important thing I want to point out, because, this is also why it's going to be difficult to change, because this is the way the system what's the system create, right? With this system, it creates a result like this. If you're going to change it, then you have to, intervene or interrupt the system, right? In which you are talking about very powerful force, right? And I think, the movie also ends with saying that one of the final dots, it's linked with politics, right? Once the rich people can buy, the politicians, that's become tricky. That becomes very difficult, right? Even in our countries, in Thailand, we talk about this, many times, right? That it leads to conflicts. All of you know about the red shirt, the yellow shirt. One of my students call it a civil wars. Okay, so again, it's definitely a really big issue. But if you want to think about how people can get out of this loop, right? Well, first of all, it's a very tough question because people at the top might not have will and incentive to do that. But it doesn't mean that that there's nothing that can be done. I think even from your study, it also shows that education play a very important role. Right? So I also believe in that as well, and not just the quantity of educations, but it's the quality of the educations. Educations will lead to opportunities. People with educations will eventually have, or likely to have, opportunities, right? And that, I think, is one of the way to try to help people out of the poverty, right? But of course, I think that's not the only thing, because the system involves a lot of factors. I just mentioned only one. Education is one factor. I believe that there are so many factors. So we need it all. And I think that's one of the things I like about the movie. It's not just one person. It's all. Everybody. It's everything needs to be working in the right way, in the right time, in the right manner to fix this problem. That's what I think.
Yeah, I just have some facts to confirm his point about political will, about the rich has taken over our politicians. Not so much, but our politicians already has been in the top 10%. As you can see, their net worth. This is our MPs, from the last election, so it's like far away. So their wealth, their net worth, it's equal to 2 minutes household net worth. Wow, right? So maybe when it's kind of challenges when we think about the policy makers, when they will make any change, right? And then we think about our current assembly, right? Or maybe they have initiate they don't have political influence because they're good people. Maybe they want to change something. So let's see how their net worth. We have like around 200 families of members of national legislative assembly, only 200 families, their net worth is equal to 1.6 million households. But then, my hypothesis might not true, might not be true, because now we have like in-person tax law, and also land tax law about to be implemented. So let's keep good hope.
Let's add a little bit, and I guess, and this might not be all they have.
Yeah, of course.
This is the reported.
Yes.
Right? This is not likely not to be all they have.
Only what has been disclosed.
What has been disclosed. And I just add that little bit thing. I think, we cannot expect change overnight. That's impossible. So at the end of the day, we expect gradual change, right? So doing a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and eventually, hopefully, if it leads, it's create a momentum to the positive directions, right? I think that would be good. So we started to have this land tax, other policies that moving into a better direction. So I also have good hope as well.
Just a quick comment on this. It may sound controversial at first, but hopefully when it's done, you guys will agree with me. So I say that education is not a magic bullet. Okay, imagine every single person in Thailand went out and got a PhD. Where would we be? Who's going to clean the toilets? Who's going to work in the factories? Who's going to clean the streets? It's never going to happen, but there's a limit to the economic benefits of raising the level of education. I still think education is the best shot any individual has, and I think the better educated populace is, the better off the entire country and the economy is from a wide range of factors. So I'm fully supportive of it, but definitely there are other things that have to happen if there's going to be shared benefits across the country. So I would suggest individuals avoid unproductive debts. Fancy cars are really fancy for a few weeks, and then they're just your car. All the nice new clothes and those kinds of things, you fill a wardrobe and you wear the thing 3 times, and it's like, oh, it's that old thing. So try to live a simple life and live for experiences instead of things. And I think people who do that tend to be happier in general. They don't worry so much about the financial and stuff as long as they're able to get by.
I think we are running out of time. May I have final comments from our panelists? What should we do with inequality as an individual? How should we live with it? Just 1 minute.
Sure. I'd say we just need to find a way to work together to have a better shared economy. I think that where we're going right now, where everyone's working against each other,
As individuals, it's like as he's done, right? We raise awareness, we raise the level of debate when we talk about inequality, where we push our government to focus on. That's what we do.
I would say that again, spreading words, make people believe, and keep doing it. Right? It's not going to be an overnight change, but if we keep doing it, we keep being consistent over the time, we should see positive progress. That's my final thoughts.
I think we all agree that inequality is abundant, and there's no low-hanging fruits in this. And our panelists made a very good point that everything is connected. It's about the systems, and we cannot solve the systems. We cannot change the system overnight. And that's why we all need to do something together for to solve it in the future. Okay, thank you very much for our panelists today, everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you again next time.
Thank you.